everyone, Dark of All Trades here. Now, esteemed viewers and casual philosophy enthusiasts, today I'm going to dive into the fascinating world of counterfactual theology. Now, before you reach for your dictionary or assume we're discussing fictional divine beings with tails, let me explain. Counterfactual thinking is essentially the grown-up version of what-if scenarios. You know, like wondering if you had actually studied for the exam instead of binge-watching cat videos. But we're taking it up a notch. We're applying this to theology, the study of religious ideas and beliefs. So why bother with things that didn't happen? Well, as it turns out, exploring alternative historical scenarios isn't just a hobby for bored historians or a plot device for sci-fi writers. It is a powerful tool for critical thinking and analysis. It helps us understand the complex web of cause and effect in history, challenging our assumptions and gaining new perspectives on the beliefs that we hold dear. In essence, counterfactual theology asks questions like, what if Moses had terrible directional skills and wandered off in the wrong direction? Or what if Buddha had discovered Netflix instead of enlightenment? Okay, well maybe not exactly those, but you get the idea. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, isn't this just making stuff up? Well, yes and no. It's more like educated speculation based on historical knowledge. It's not about creating alternative facts, we'll leave that to the politicians, but about understanding the pivotal moments in religious history and how things could have unfolded differently. So for this video, we're all going to embark on a theological thought experiment that would make even the most daring philosopher say, "Hold my scroll." We'll explore how key events in religious history could have played out differently and what that means for the faiths we know today. So buckle up your mental seatbelts, open your minds, and let's dive into the captivating world of counterfactual theology. By the end of this video, you might never look at what if the same ever again, and you might just impress your friends at the next trivia night. Now that we've dipped our toes into the what if waters, let's go a little bit deeper. Counterfactual theology is like the rebellious cousin of traditional theology. While traditional theology often focuses on interpreting religious texts and understanding existing beliefs, counterfactual theology says, hold the communion wine, and asks, but what if things had happened differently? At its core, counterfactual theology is about exploring alternative scenarios in religious history and their potential implications. It's like playing chess with the universe, but instead of moving pieces on a board, we're moving pivotal moments in history and seeing how the game of faith might have played out differently. But how does this differ from traditional theological approaches? Well, traditional theology often starts with accepted beliefs and works backwards to understand or justify them. Counterfactual theology, on the other hand, starts with a historical pivot point and works forward, exploring how changes might ripple through time and alter the landscape of belief. Now, before you start thinking this is just some theological fan fiction, let me assure you that counterfactual thinking has real-world applications in many fields. Historians use it to better understand causality in historical events. Psychologists use it to explore the decision-making processes. Even economists use it to model alternative economic policies. For example, military strategists often use counterfactual thinking to analyze past battles. They might ask, what if Napoleon had different weather at Waterloo? This isn't just idle speculation, it helps them understand the factors that influence military outcomes. In the business world, companies use counterfactual thinking for scenario planning. They might ask, what if our biggest competitor merged with another company? This helps them prepare for potential future challenges. Bringing this back to theology, counterfactual thinking allows us to explore the contingencies of religious development. It helps us understand the religions we know today aren't inevitable outcomes, but the results of specific historical circumstances and human decisions. So the next time someone tells you that their religion is the one true path that was always meant to be, you can smile knowingly and think, but what if? Now that we've established what counterfactual theology is, let's talk about why it's not just a mental exercise for the overcaffeinated. You see, counterfactuals aren't just for imagining alternative universes where everyone wears fedoras and rides velociraptors. They're a serious tool for challenging our assumptions, understanding history, and exploring the what-ifs that have shaped our world today. First up, let's talk about challenging assumptions. We all have them, those deeply ingrained beliefs about how the world works, or in this case, how religious truths are supposed to be. But what happens when we shake things up a bit? What if we take a key event in religious history and ask, what if it had gone another way? Suddenly, those rock-solid beliefs start to feel more like Jenga blocks, and that's a good thing. Why? Because questioning our assumptions forces us to think more critically. It helps us see that what we often consider inevitable or predestined might just be the result of a series of historical accidents. But let's dive into historical contingencies. Sounds fancy, right? But really, that's just a way of saying that history isn't a straight line leading from point A to point B. Instead, it's like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books, with a lot of twists and turns and possible endings. By using counterfactuals, we start to see just how much certain events influence the direction of religious history. For example, if Martin Luther had decided to keep his 95 Theses to himself, would Protestantism ever taken off? Maybe, maybe not. But by exploring these alternative scenarios, we gain a deeper appreciation for the fragile and often unpredictable nature of historical developments. Finally, let's talk about culture and society. Religions don't develop in a vacuum. They're shaped by the people who practice them, the societies they emerge in, and the cultures they interact with. Counterfactual thinking allows us to see how different cultural and social influences might have steered religions in new directions. What if early Christianity had spread more rapidly in Asia than in Europe? How might Buddhist or Hindu thought have influenced Christian doctrine? These are the kinds of questions that can help us see religion not as a monolithic, unchanged entity, but as something dynamic, adaptable, and deeply connected to the world around it. So why are counterfactuals important in religious analysis? Because they help us question the status quo, understand the complex web of history, and reveal the cultural forces that shape our beliefs. By the end of this, you might just start questioning everything, and that is the whole point. Alright folks, now that we've warmed up with some theory, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty. For our first case study, we're going to explore the scenario that could have completely reshaped Christianity as we know it. What if the Apostle Paul, one of the most influential figures in early Christianity, had never converted? But let's set the scene. Paul, originally named Saul, wasn't always the poster boy for Christianity. In fact, he started out as a devout Jew who was pretty intent on stamping out this new movement of Mr. Jesus followers. According to the New Testament, he had a dramatic conversion experience on the road to Damascus, where he suddenly encountered the risen Christ. This event led to his transformation from a fierce persecutor of Christians to one of their most ardent advocates. Paul's letters make up a significant portion of the New Testament, and his teachings played a crucial role in shaping Christian doctrine, especially for Gentiles, that is, non-Jews. But what if the dramatic conversion never happened? What if Paul had stayed Saul, the zealous defender of Judaism? The most immediate consequence would be the lack of Pauline theology in early Christianity. Paul was instrumental in spreading Christianity beyond the Jewish community and framing it as a universal faith. Without Paul, the early Christian movement might have remained a small Jewish sect, struggling to gain traction among non-Jews. Moreover, Paul's unique interpretation of Mr. Jesus' teachings, especially regarding salvation, grace, and the role of law, might never have gained prominence. Early Christian debates about whether Gentiles needed to follow Jewish law, such as circumcision, might have led to a more fragmented and possibly less appealing religion for non-Jewish converts. Christianity might not have spread as widely or rapidly, and its role in the Roman Empire could have been significantly diminished. The implications for Christian theology are profound. Without Paul, the New Testament would lose a significant chunk of its content, including the famous passage that helped shape Christian thought for centuries. Think faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love, 1 Corinthians 13:13. Or the doctrine of justification by faith alone, Romans 3:28 and Ephesians 2:8-9. Christianity might have developed a very different set of beliefs, perhaps one that leaned more heavily on Jewish laws and traditions. In terms of practice, the Christian emphasis on missionary work and spreading the faith to all corners of the earth might have been less pronounced without Paul's influence. His tireless work in founding the churches across the Roman Empire set a precedent for Christian evangelism that continues to this day. So what if Paul had never converted? The version of Christianity we know today might have looked very different, perhaps less universal, less theologically diverse, and less widespread. By exploring this counterfactual scenario, we can better appreciate the contingency of history and how individual decisions can have lasting impacts on religious development. Ready for more? Let's take a look at our next case study. Now that we've imagined a world without the Apostle Paul's influence, let's turn our attention to another pivotal moment in the Christian history, the Council of Nicaea. This was a major turning point, shaping the very core of Christian doctrine. But what if it had never happened? What if for some reason this council of bishops had never been convened? To set the stage, we're in the early 4th century CE. Christianity is rapidly spreading throughout the Roman Empire, but there's a big problem. Christians can't agree on some key theological issues, especially about the nature of Christ. Enter Emperor Constantine, who, after converting to Christianity, decides to bring together all the bishops to hash out these theological differences. The result is the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, which is famous for establishing the Nicene Creed, a statement of faith that clarified the divinity of Christ and established a uniform Christian doctrine. This council was a milestone in defining Orthodox Christianity and setting the stage for the Church's future unity and power. But what if Constantine had never called this council? Maybe he was too busy with other political issues, or perhaps the bishops just couldn't get their act together. Without the Council of Nicaea, the Christian Church might have remained deeply divided, with no clear consensus on fundamental theological questions. The Arian controversy, that was the debate over whether Christ was of the same substance as the God the Father or a created being, might have continued to fester, leading to further fragmentation within the Church. In this alternate reality, we could see a Christianity that developed among multiple divergent paths, with various religions and communities holding different beliefs about the nature of Christ and other key doctrines. The idea of a unified Catholic, meaning universal, church might have never taken hold, and instead of one dominant form of Christianity, we may have ended up with a patchwork of competing Christianities, each with its own creed and practices, at least at the time. The implications for Christian doctrine would be significant. Without the Nicene Creed as a standard of orthodoxy, the theological diversity within Christianity might have been much greater. We might see the survival and growth of alternate Christologies, like Arianism, which proposed that Christ was not co-eternal with the Father. Over time, these differing beliefs could have led to the development of entirely separate religious traditions, each claiming to be the true form of Christianity. Additionally, the lack of a unified doctrine would have weakened the central authority of the Church. The role of the bishops, and eventually the Pope, in defining and enforcing orthodoxy would have been less prominent. This could have resulted in a much more decentralized and less politically powerful church, with less influence over the Roman Empire and later European states. And furthermore, the absence of a standardized Christian doctrine might have made the religion less appealing to rulers looking for a unified ideology. Without a clear, centralized doctrine, Christianity might have been less successful in becoming the dominant religion of Europe. We might have seen a more pluralistic religious landscape in Europe, with other faiths or even philosophical schools of thought maintaining more influence alongside Christianity. In conclusion, the absence of the Council of Nicaea could have led to a fragmented Christianity with a diversity of beliefs and practices and a church with far less centralized power. By exploring this counterfactual, we gain insight into how critical events and decisions have shaped the development of one of the world's major religions, and how different our world might have been if things had gone another way. So what's the takeaway? History isn't set in stone, and neither are the religions that grow from it. Let's move on to see how counterfactual thinking can be applied even more broadly. Now that we've taken a closer look at some specific what-if scenarios, you might be wondering, is this just an interesting mental exercise, or can we apply counterfactual thinking more broadly? The answer is yes, and it's not just limited to Christianity. Let's explore how counterfactuals can be used to examine other religions, personal beliefs, and even the limitations of this approach. First off, counterfactual thinking isn't just for Christian history buffs. It can be applied to any religious tradition. For example, what if Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, had never left his palace to seek enlightenment? How might Buddhism have developed, or would have it existed at all? Or consider Hinduism. What if Ashoka, the ancient Indian emperor, had embraced Hinduism rather than Buddhism? This could have drastically altered the religious landscape of South Asia. In Islam, we might ask, what if the Quran had been compiled differently? Or if key battles during the early Islamic conquests had gone the other way? Each of these counterfactuals can shed light on the pivotal moments that shape these religions and offer insight to how different cultural, social, and historical forces influence religious development. But it doesn't stop there. Counterfactual thinking can be a powerful tool for self-reflection. Have you ever wondered how your own beliefs might be different if you were born in another time, place, or culture? What if you had been raised in a different religion or no religion at all? By asking these kinds of questions, we can start to understand just how much our beliefs are shaped by our environment and our experiences. This doesn't necessarily mean that our beliefs are wrong or invalid, but it does encourage us to approach them with a sense of humility and openness to other perspectives. It's a way of reminding ourselves that our truths, however deeply held, are often contingent on a whole host of factors beyond our control. Of course, no approach is without its limitations. While counterfactual thinking can be enlightening, it's important to recognize that it is also inherently speculative. We can never truly know what would have happened if history had taken a different turn, and it's easy to fall into the trap of oversimplifying complex events or assuming that one small change would have led to a completely different outcome. Additionally, focusing too much on what ifs can sometimes distract us from understanding and appreciating the historical reality that actually did occur. Another potential pitfall is the temptation to use counterfactuals to push a particular agenda or narrative. For instance, someone might propose a counterfactual scenario where a different religious outcome would have been better or worse for society, depending on their own biases. It's important to approach counterfactual theology with an open mind and a critical eye, always aware of the speculative nature of these exercises. That said, when used thoughtfully, counterfactual thinking can be a valuable tool for exploring the complexities of religious history and development. It encourages us to think critically, question assumptions, and consider the many ways in which history and belief are intertwined. So while you're pondering the past reflections on your own beliefs, don't be afraid to ask what if. And as we move towards this conclusion, let's recap the key points and reflect on how you can apply these ideas to your own thinking. We began by delving into the concept of counterfactual theology, asking what-if questions to reimagine key moments in religious history, from considering a world without the Apostle Paul's conversion to speculating on the impact of a never-held Council of Nicaea. We've seen how pivotal these events were in shaping the Christianity we know today. We also explored how counterfactual thinking isn't limited to Christianity. It's a tool that can be applied across different religions and even to our personal beliefs. Counterfactuals challenge us to rethink assumptions, recognize the contingencies of history, and understand the cultural and social forces that influence religious development. But we also acknowledge the speculative nature of this approach and the importance of using it with a balanced perspective. So where does this leave us? Well, hopefully with a newfound appreciation for the power of what if. Whether you're a scholar, a believer, a skeptic, or just someone curious about history and religion, counterfactual thinking offers a unique lens through which to view the world. It is a way to engage more deeply with the complexities of history and to consider the many paths that were possible, not just the one that was taken. I encourage you to apply this kind of thinking in your own life. The next time you hear a claim about the inevitability of a particular religious belief or historical event, take a step back and ask, but what if? You might just discover new insights or develop a deeper understanding of the rich tapestry of history and belief. In the end, counterfactual theology isn't about rewriting history or undermining deeply held beliefs. It's about expanding our minds, fostering critical thinking, and appreciating the delicate balance of events that have shaped our world. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, history could have been different, and so could have our beliefs. Thank you for joining me on this. I am interested in your thoughts. Do you have any scenarios you'd like to think about that would make beliefs and life different when it comes to religion? Do you have one you'd like to explore? Well, just let me know in the comments below. A special thanks to my patrons, Calamitous Anima, Sora, Long-Haired Lefty, Musical Ocelot, Ooga Booga Luga, Anonymous Netizen, Angel, Tarek Alkasab, Jamabom, Kai Henningsen, and Triple Towel, who without them, my channel might not exist today. But if you wanted to join them, you could do that for as low as $1 a month at patreon.com/darkofalltrades. I have a lot of fun with these lectures, and I would love to know your thoughts on them. Please keep those comments coming. And as always, keep learning.